Tonight, we return to one of the oldest unsolved mysteries in American history, a vanished colony. 115 men, women, and children, gone without a trace. In 1587, they crossed the ocean to build a new life on Roanoke Island. 3 years later, when a supply ship finally returned, the settlement was empty. Their homes were dismantled. Their defenses still stood. No bodies, no signs of struggle. Only one word carved into a wooden post: CROATOAN. To this day, no one knows what happened to them. Before we dive deep into this unsettling mystery, hit subscribe, drop a like, and comment where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. It's always fascinating to see who is getting intrigued by the same mystery across the world. Now, let's begin. The year is 1587, and the Atlantic is restless. Out on the open sea, 3 English ships cut through the waves: the Lion, the Elizabeth, and the Flyboat. On board are 115 settlers, not hardened soldiers or mercenaries, but families, craftsmen, carpenters, farmers, women holding infants, children clinging to whatever they recognize from home. This is not a conquest. This is hope, packed into wooden hulls and set adrift toward the unknown. They follow a man named John White, an artist turned governor, a man trusted by Sir Walter Raleigh to lead England's first real foothold in the New World. The mission is simple, at least on paper: build a permanent English colony, claim new land, survive. But the people aboard know what happened to the last expedition. A small group of men left behind on Roanoke Island 2 years earlier and never heard from again. Still, they press on. The promise of land and a new start outweighs the danger. Weeks pass at sea, weeks of cramped decks, salted meat, dying livestock, and the constant fear of storms. But finally, the sails catch a different kind of wind, warmer, wilder. They smell pine, marsh, and untamed earth. They've made it. Roanoke Island. It lies off the coast of what is now North Carolina, a strip of land protected from the ocean by barrier islands. To the settlers, it might as well be another planet. Dense forests stand where London's streets should be. The cries of unseen birds echo over the water. The soil is rich, but untouched. There are no stone walls, no village squares, no bells. Just raw land, indifferent to their presence. The settlers step ashore and get to work. They repair old wooden fortifications, raise new houses out of timber, begin clearing fields for crops. They plant beans and corn, anything that might grow in strange soil. The work is backbreaking, but it feels like progress, like the beginning of something that might last. And then, a cry. Someone has found a skeleton. It doesn't take long to learn the truth. The men left behind from the earlier expedition are gone. No survivors, just scattered bones. It's a warning, but too late to turn back. John White knows they need help. They need allies. They reach out to the nearby tribes, the CROATOAN among them, hoping for peace, cooperation, trade. Some are willing. Others are not. Tensions build. Trust fractures. An Englishman goes missing. Another is found with arrows in his chest. The message is clear. The island is not empty, and not all neighbors are friendly. Still, they push forward. They have no other choice. In August, a child is born. A girl. Virginia Dare, the first English child born on American soil. Her birth is a symbol. Proof that this isn't just a camp. It's a colony meant to grow. A place meant to hold families, not just soldiers and sailors. But food is running out. Their supplies are dwindling faster than they can plant or gather. The ocean gives only so much. Hunting is unreliable. Winter is coming. And worse, their relationship with nearby tribes is deteriorating. Every misunderstanding becomes a threat. Every shadow becomes a weapon. A decision has to be made. John White, Their governor, their link to London, must return to England for supplies. He doesn't want to go. His daughter is here. His granddaughter, newborn, fragile, alive, is here. But the colony can't survive without aid. They press him, beg him, tell him it's the only option. And so, with a heavy heart, he agrees. White boards a ship headed back across the Atlantic, promising the settlers he will return quickly, with food, soldiers, tools, hope. They watch his ship fade into the horizon. They believe he'll return in months, but history has other plans. On the voyage home, White learns England is preparing for war. The Spanish Armada is approaching. The entire country is armed and bracing for invasion. Every ship is needed, every sailor pressed into service. White is trapped. He tries to secure passage back. He's refused. He pleads with commanders. He offers money. He begs. But the war consumes everything. Months drag into a year. A year slips into 2. Roanoke is starving, isolated, and silent. And John White can do nothing. The settlers, his family, are alone, surrounded by wilderness and enemies, with no sign of rescue. He imagines their daily lives, rationing food, patching homes, watching the horizon for a ship that never comes. Children growing thinner, mothers digging for roots, men guarding the fort through sleepless nights. He imagines them waiting, and waiting, and waiting. By the time White finally finds passage back, 3 years have passed. He steps ashore in 1590, heart-pounding, desperate to hear voices, hoping for laughter, expecting to see someone, anyone, rushing to greet him. But the island is silent. No smoke, no movement, no footprints in the sand. The homes are gone, dismantled, the fort abandoned, tools missing, oats gone, not a single body, not a single grave, not a single clue except one, carved into a wooden post, CROATOAN. And just like that, the colony that began with hope becomes a mystery that lasts 400 years. A mystery that still has no answer. Another chapter begins, one that no survivor ever lived to tell. The settlers arrived believing they could build a New England on unfamiliar soil, but Roanoke was no blank canvas. The island was already part of a living landscape, one shaped by the Algonquian-speaking tribes who had hunted, fished, and lived along these shores long before a single English foot touched the sand. At first, the native presence was not a threat, but a question one the settlers could not answer. Some tribes were cautious, observing the colony from a distance. Others were openly wary, remembering the violence and betrayal of earlier English expeditions. Governor John White tried to maintain peace, but he had inherited a fragile situation. Trade was uncertain. Trust was thin. Every misunderstanding felt like a step toward disaster. Hunger began to creep in early. The land was fertile, but the settlers were unprepared for the climate, the soil, the simple fact that nothing grew according to English seasons. Their seeds failed. The yields were weak. Game was scarce. They had not brought enough supplies, and now they were trying to survive in a place where every meal depended on diplomacy. Some native communities helped, offering food, showing where to fish, teaching them how to forage. Others refused, fearing the English were more than temporary visitors. Every day a negotiation. Every interaction carried weight. White understood this was a delicate balance, and he tried to preserve it, but there were settlers who did not share his restraint. Tensions erupted. A misunderstanding turned deadly. A single act of violence could erase months of peace. White saw it happening and knew it couldn't last. Roanoke was becoming a settlement on borrowed time. Then, in the midst of uncertainty, something extraordinary happened. In August of 1587, Eleanor Dare, John White's daughter, gave birth to a child, a girl, the first English baby born on American soil. Her name was Virginia Dare. The colony gathered to witness her christening, and for a moment, fear lifted. They looked at this child and saw not struggle, but promise, a sign that they were meant to be here, a symbol of a future that had not yet been shattered. But symbols cannot feed starving people, and hope cannot replace supplies. As late summer passed into fall, reality returned. Their food stores were shrinking. Hunting was inconsistent. Relations with nearby tribes had become unpredictable, one day friendly, the next tense or standoffish. The settlers could not live off uncertainty. Something had to change, or the colony would fail. The decision was painful, but inevitable. They needed help from England, desperately, immediately. No more waiting. No more hoping that conditions would improve. John White would have to sail back across the Atlantic and beg for supplies. It meant leaving his daughter, his newborn granddaughter, the settlement he had led and struggled to keep alive. But it was the only choice left. Without support, Roanoke was not a colony. It was a countdown, and time was running out. White did not know it then. No one did. But he was about to leave Roanoke for the last time. The next chapter in this story begins not with survival, but with absence. John White did not want to leave. No leader abandons a colony willingly, especially not one containing his own blood. He stood on Roanoke's shore, knowing that every face watching him expected salvation, and he could only offer a promise. Not food, not certainty. A promise. He told them he would return quickly, weeks, maybe a few months, with ships, supplies, and reinforcements. It was the only hope they had left, but hope is fragile, and the world beyond Roanoke was about to collapse into war. White boarded the ship anyway. He kissed his daughter goodbye, held his infant granddaughter one last time, and stepped onto the deck. The wind carried him away from the island and into a disaster unfolding across the ocean. When he returned to England, he found a nation preparing to fight for its life. The Spanish Armada, the most powerful naval force on the planet, was on its way. England was in full wartime frenzy. Every ship was claimed by the crown. Every competent sailor was drafted into military service. White begged for a vessel. Just one. He didn't need soldiers. He didn't need warships. He needed a crew, supplies, and a chance to keep a colony alive. He was denied. Again and again. He watched fleets gather for battle. Fleets that could have carried food, tools, seeds, hope, but instead carried gunpowder and cannon. Days passed. Weeks disappeared. The war consumed everything. Roanoke was not a priority. It wasn't even a footnote. White tried to slip out on a merchant vessel. Blocked. He tried to hire passage on a private ship. Seized. The Queen's orders were absolute. No ship leaves England. Not while invasion threatens. White became a man out of time, pacing docks, pleading with captains, imagining his granddaughter starving. Messages from America stopped. There were no updates, no letters, no way to know if the colony was surviving or dying. He could only wait. The war stretched on. England fought. Fires burned. Ships sank. Roanoke was forgotten by everyone, except the man who had left it behind. Months dragged into a year, then two. Still no permission, no passage, no ship. The settlers had food for maybe a season, maybe less. White could do nothing but replay his last moments with them, the wave from the shore, the trust in their eyes. A trust he could no longer deserve. By the time he finally secured a ship, 3 years had passed. 3 years of silence. 3 years without a message. 3 years of imagining the worst and hoping, somehow, for the best. The journey back was not triumphant. It was haunted. White was no longer a governor returning to his people. He was a man sailing toward a question he feared to answer. Was anyone still alive? Did Roanoke survive long enough for this rescue to matter? The waves carried him back toward a colony frozen in time. But time was never kind to Roanoke. The next chapter begins when he steps ashore and finds nothing but absence. John White steps off the ship, expecting to hear voices. Laughter, footsteps, anything human. 3 years ago, he left behind a fragile settlement full of families, builders, dreamers, people who trusted him to return. Now the shoreline greets him with nothing but wind and gulls. No one runs to meet him. No child calls his name. The silence is immediate and absolute, the kind that tells him something is wrong before he sees a single detail. He moves inland, calling out, waiting for an answer that never comes. The village stands where he left it, but it isn't the same place. The houses are still there, but not as ruins. They haven't been burned. They haven't collapsed. They've been dismantled, plank by plank, as if the settlers took them apart intentionally. No shattered walls, no blood, no arrows, nothing to suggest a raid or a massacre. It looks almost calm, almost deliberate. Tools are missing. Barrels are missing. Personal items are gone. Not looted, taken. White walks through the settlement with the slow dread of a man entering a graveyard without bodies. He searches the ground for signs of struggle. There are none. No bones in the dirt. No discarded weapons. No signs of disease. No shallow graves. If the settlers died here, the land kept every secret. He calls again, voice cracking. Still nothing. The air feels wrong, as if the island itself is holding its breath. White expected the worst. Scattered remains, burned shelters, skeletal hands clutching empty air. Instead, he finds absence. A careful, maddening absence. The fort is intact, but lightly fortified, as though it had been maintained until the very end. The houses were dismantled, not destroyed. That means someone took the time. Someone planned. Someone intended to leave. But leave for where? And why leave nothing behind? White checks the shoreline. The boats are gone. Not broken. Not sunk. Gone. If there was a hurried escape, there would be debris. If they fled under attack, there would be chaos. But this is orderly. It looks like they packed up and walked away, as if Roanoke was only ever meant to be temporary. He searches for footprints, trails, smoke on the horizon, anything. The forest offers nothing but branches, leaves, and silence. Inside what remains of a storage hut, he finds empty space where food once was. No stores, no seeds, no barrels. Everything that could be carried was carried. Whatever happened, the settlers didn't vanish in fear. They vanished with purpose. White looks toward the distant shoreline, toward the mainland, toward the possibility that they relocated. The thought is a lifeline. If they moved, if they survived, if they left together, then maybe his family is still alive. But then reality returns. 3 years. 3 years without supplies. 3 years without ships. 3 years of storms, droughts, winters. If they survived the first season, could they survive all that followed? The colony had come to build a future. Now White can barely find the past. He wanders the empty settlement, retracing the places where people once lived. Here, a family gathered around a fire. There, children played in the dust. Over there, his daughter must have held her newborn close, praying he would return before it was too late. The island gives him no answers, only questions, and time is running out. Storm clouds gather offshore. The same Atlantic storms that delayed him for years threaten to cut his search short. His ship's crew grows anxious. They didn't come here to die. White keeps searching anyway. Every corner of the settlement, every tree line, every path. He returns again and again to the same conclusion. No bodies, no blood, no destruction. Just a colony that prepared to leave and left without a trace. The silence presses against him, deafening, merciless. He had imagined every kind of tragedy, but never this. A story with no ending. A mystery with no voice. A disappearance with no witness. The wind shifts. White closes his eyes, trying to imagine what happened in the hours after he sailed away. Did they wait for him? Did they lose hope? Did they choose survival over loyalty? Or did something else, something unseen, force them into the unknown? The homes are gone. The hearths are cold. The island is silent. And there is still one more thing to find, the only clue left by the vanished colony. A single carved word that turns a disappearance into a legend. At the edge of the empty settlement, John White finally finds something. Not a body, not a diary, not a scrap of clothing. Just a single word, carved into a wooden post with deliberate strokes. CROATOAN. No panic in the carving, no sign of distress. Just a message, left behind by people who knew he'd return. A few paces away, another tree bears only 3 letters. Crow. A shortened version, or perhaps a rushed attempt, cut short by time, danger, or urgency. White's heart surges. This isn't a grave marker. It's a direction, a signal, a clue. CROATOAN wasn't a mystery to him. It was a place. A nearby island, home to friendly natives who had once traded with the colonists. If the settlers had moved, if they relocated, if they survived, that's where they would have gone. His daughter, his little granddaughter, the families he left behind. They might still be alive, waiting. After 3 long years of silence, White finally has hope. One word, carved in wood, holding the weight of every unanswered question. He orders the crew to prepare the ship. They will sail south. They will find the colony. They will bring them home. But the Atlantic has other plans. As they leave Roanoke, the weather turns. Winds rise, seas twist, dark clouds swallow the horizon. A storm hits fast and furious, ripping sails, bending masts, slamming waves onto the deck hard enough to tear ropes free. The crew fights to keep the ship upright. Water floods the deck. Lightning cracks. The storm feels personal, as if the ocean itself is blocking the truth. Men shout over the wind. Equipment is lost to the sea. Hours pass in chaos. By dawn, the ship is barely holding together. The captain makes a decision White cannot accept. They will not continue. Not to CROATOAN. Not to anywhere. They are turning back. White pleads. He argues. He begs. His family may be alive. His people may be waiting. Their only clue lies just a short sail away. But the captain refuses. One more storm could mean death for them all. And so the ship turns away from CROATOAN. Away from the only lead the colony ever left. Away from the last place they might still be breathing. The coastline shrinks behind them. The waves settle. The word CROATOAN remains unanswered. John White leaves Roanoke for the last time. He will never return. He will never learn what happened to his daughter. He will never hold his granddaughter. He will spend the rest of his life searching for answers in letters, maps, rumors, but the truth stays just out of reach. The lost colony remains lost. A settlement abandoned without violence. A village stripped clean, not ruined. A message carved in wood. A storm that stops the search. And a mystery that begins right where the tracks go cold. When John White left Roanoke for the last time, the mystery began. And for more than 4 centuries, the world has been trying to solve it. What happened to 115 men, women, and children without leaving a single trace? Not bones, not bodies, not burned ruins, just silence. And one carved word. Over time, historians, archaeologists, and researchers have formed theories, each compelling, each incomplete. The first, assimilation. Some believe the colonists didn't die. They adapted. They turned to the only allies they had left, the native tribes. There were friendly groups nearby, especially the CROATOAN people. If the colony was starving, if help never arrived, survival would mean merging with those already living on the land. Reports from later settlers claimed to see English traits in native tribes: gray eyes, familiar clothing, even English-style homes. A few accounts describe natives speaking broken English generations later. If this is true, the colonists didn't disappear. They became someone else. The second theory, the Lost March. The settlers may have abandoned Roanoke and tried to head inland together. No boats, no supplies, just hope and desperation. They would have pushed through swamps, forests, and hostile territory. No trail, no map, no help. If they died along the way, the land swallowed them whole. No graves, no markers. Just lost footsteps in a wilderness that erased them. Then comes the darker idea, a Spanish attack. At the time, England and Spain were at war. The Spanish were hunting English settlements along the coast, determined to stop their expansion into the New World. A quiet raid, quick killings, bodies buried or burned. The settlement dismantled, not destroyed, to erase the evidence. Spain would have had every reason to make Roanoke vanish without a trace, but there are no records, no confession, no proof, only suspicion. Another explanation sits closer to home: famine and disease. The colony was already starving before White left. Crops failed. Winter was brutal. Tensions with native tribes made hunting risky. If food ran out, panic follows. Sickness spreads. People scatter. Small groups would leave, searching for fresh water, wild plants, anywhere to survive. One by one, they break apart and die far from the colony. No cemetery, no final stand, just quiet extinction. Then there's the space beyond logic, something else. A storm strong enough to sweep people into the sea. A massacre the survivors never got to record. A mutiny that spiraled into chaos. Something supernatural, the territory where legends grow. Some say the land itself rejected them, that Roanoke is cursed, that everyone there was claimed by something the English had no name for. Every theory leads somewhere, but none leads all the way. We have stories, fragments, traces, but not a truth. Not yet, because the lost colony left behind no witnesses, no answers, no ending. Just a question that refuses to die, and a mystery carved into wood, still waiting to speak. Decades passed. Roanoke faded into myth. Then, suddenly, it came roaring back. The year was 1937, nearly 350 years after the colony vanished, when a strange stone surfaced in North Carolina. It was carved, roughly, painfully, almost like a message someone had chiseled in desperation. The inscription claimed to tell the fate of the missing settlers. It spoke of suffering, hunger, attacks, death, and at the bottom, initials: EWD, Eleanor White Dare, the daughter of John White, the mother of Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the New World. A second stone appeared, then a third, soon dozens. Some told of sickness. Some described massacres. One said they fled inland. Another claimed Virginia was killed. One stone even said Eleanor had married into a native tribe and raised children. It was a story written in fragments, as if the lost colony were speaking back from the grave. But history is never that kind. Experts examined the stones. Some appeared old. Some too new. Investigators uncovered forgeries. A few were proven fake beyond doubt, but others, not so simple. The inscriptions were weathered, the language archaic, the details unnervingly accurate. Enough uncertainty remained to keep the mystery alive. The Dare stones became a riddle inside a riddle. Part truth, part hoax, part silence. And they weren't the only strange leads. In coastal tribes, Researchers documented Welsh-sounding words, names and phrases with no native origin. Some claimed they saw blue-eyed children living among tribes centuries after the colony vanished. Later genetic tests revealed sparks of European DNA in isolated indigenous families, long before official contact. And then there were the artifacts. A gun barrel found hundreds of miles inland, a ring engraved with European markings, tools that matched 16th century English forging, each one real, each one out of place, but none of it forms a whole. None tells us what truly happened. Every stone, every rumor, every scrap of evidence feels like a whisper without a voice. Roanoke sits at the edge of proof, a story just beyond reach. And every clue leads us deeper, not closer. Because the truth is scattered, buried, broken, maybe lost forever. But the mystery still breathes. Roanoke didn't stay buried in the past. It grew a second life, one built not of timber and clay, but in stories, films, and imagination. The Lost Colony became more than history. It became myth, a blank space where facts end and folklore begins. In classrooms, it's taught as America's first great mystery. But outside those walls, Roanoke transforms. It becomes a ghost story, a warning, a cultural echo. Writers seized on it. Novelists spun tales of doomed settlers, of hidden tribes, of survival and betrayal. Some imagined a peaceful ending, a new life built with native allies. Others leaned into darkness, starvation, madness, violence. Roanoke became a canvas for fear. And where fear goes, pop culture follows. Television picked up the thread. Documentaries show maps and theories. History channels trace timelines, testing every possibility. Then came the dramatizations, shows that blur fact and fiction until the two become inseparable. American Horror Story turned Roanoke into a nightmare, a story of blood, sacrifice, and restless spirits. Entirely fictional, yet rooted in the real unease of people who vanish without a trace. Conspiracy theorists took it further. Some say the colony was abducted, not by enemies, but by something not human. Others claim they walked into another dimension, pulled out of time itself. YouTube explodes with theories, aliens, portals, secret experiments, all piled atop a mystery that was already deep enough. Roanoke becomes whatever the storyteller needs it to be. A tragedy, a thriller, a warning about colonial arrogance, or simply a story that refuses to die. And that's the strange power of it. We don't know what happened. We may never know. But Roanoke lives on, not in ruins or artifacts, but in imagination. In the space where history fractures and legends begin. And that silence, that gap in the record, becomes the loudest thing of all. Roanoke endures because it breaks every rule we rely on to understand the past. Most tragedies leave evidence, bones, ash, weapons, written accounts, something. But here, nothing. No battlefield, no disease pit, no signs of starvation, no graves marked or unmarked, just absence. A colony of more than 100 men, women, and children, simply gone. And that absence becomes louder than any discovery. It forces us to ask questions with no answers, to imagine what we cannot prove. It isn't just a mystery. It's a wound in history, a blank space where lives should be. These were people with names, families, dreams. They brought furniture, tools, seeds, books. They planned a future in a place they barely understood. And then, silence. It haunts us because it could have been anything. A peaceful assimilation, a desperate, a betrayal, a betrayal, a betrayal, a massacre no one lived to record, or something stranger, something history was never meant to hold. We're left with fragments, not facts, hints, not truth. And at the heart of it all, one word, carved into wood with calm, deliberate strokes. Not a warning, not a scream, not a plea for help, just a destination. CROATOAN is the only voice the settlers left behind. A single word carrying the weight of an entire vanished world. A final clue, or one last mystery. And that is why Roanoke refuses to fade. Because we are still looking, still hoping, still imagining the moment they disappeared into the unknown. Because deep down, we fear the same thing, that one day people can vanish, and time will erase even the proof they were ever here.